one thing happened this week, and it was a blessing to me. My neighbor, Amy, we worked on doing her yard, and so I want to thank all the guys who helped with that. We got a lot of work, tremendous amount of work done over a very quick period of time. Took a picture of the guys as we finished. There were a couple, Jason Parton and Sean Harris, that aren't in the picture because they weren't there then. But thank you, everybody, for helping out with that. It was a great blessing. I know Amy's extremely grateful for that. So thank you for making yourself available and serving in that way. This morning I want to talk about, the idea of my message for this Sunday came out of a comment that was made in the sharing last Sunday when somebody mentioned growing pains. And it got me thinking on that idea, and so that's kind of what I want to talk about this morning. But I want to start with the idea of change. And I don't know if you guys remember these lines, but there was always a joke of how many does it take to change a light bulb type of thing. And so I'll share a few with you. How many therapists does it take to change a light bulb? The answer is none. The light bulb has to want to change. How many Mexicans does it take to change a light bulb? And the answer is just one. He got it. How many narcissists does it take to change a light bulb? Just one. He holds the light bulb while the world revolves around him. How many Vietnam vets does it take to change a light bulb? You don't know, man. You weren't there, man. How many Mr. Riders does it take to change a light bulb? Two. One to screw it almost all the way in, and the other to give it a surprising twist at the end. How many I know some of you appreciate this. How many Grateful Dead fans does it take to change a light bulb? None. They just let it burn out and follow it around for a few decades. How many computer scientists does it take to change a light bulb? None. That's a hardware issue. How many roaming hippies does it take to change a light bulb? Change? You got some change, man? Anything will help. This one you appreciate. How many alcoholics does it take to screw in a light bulb? Two. One to hold the bulb and the other to drink until the room spins. How many cops does it take to change a light bulb? Just one, but he'll take 6 shots at it. And how many sons does it take to screw in a light bulb? Only one, but you have to ask him about 50 times. And one that I always appreciated, how many church elders does it take to change in a light bulb? Change. We don't need change around here. So change. What we're talking about is change. And as I thought about this, I thought a guy I'd like to interview and talk about this is somebody who has been here about 4 months. And that's Todd Stewart. And so Todd, if you can come up, I have a few questions I want to talk to you about. I think one of the things I appreciate about Todd is I think he's been very conscientious about trying to address things and change things in his life. And so I appreciate his effort to do that. And so I had some questions I wanted to share with him about that and see kind of what his experience in this idea of change looks like. So I guess my first question is, obviously you've been in 4 months. So what brought you to his way in the first place?
Well, I was in an outpatient program. It's called Thrive, the Den. It was 3 nights a week, 3 hours a night. And I was living with my brother in it was kind of a bad environment. And I couldn't stop what I was doing. They worked with me and tried to help me as much as they could. And I would, go a week or 2 here or there, but I kept falling back. I couldn't stop what I was doing with the pills.
Mm-hmm. So how did you hear about his way then?
Oh, well, actually the people at Thrive, one of the counselors thought it was a good match if there was some way of getting me here, if I could get in and everything. They talked to somebody here, and it was worked out, and I was able to come.
Okay. So Thrive thought it'd be a good match for you. How have you experienced it here? What has it been a good match in your mind? What have been some of the things that you feel like you've gotten from this experience thus far?
Oh, it's been a good match. At first, you know, I was scared to death. I was very uncomfortable, and you know, one time I came to you and I asked you, well, you know, what would you say if I said could I get the money out of my bank and leave? And you said you'd ask me why did I come here, and that got me, you know, it kind of jarred me and got me to thinking. You know, like I said, the first few weeks was really hard. It was up and down. I didn't know from day to day how I could stay here and do what y'all were asking me to do. It was just too uncomfortable. The guys here were a lot of help. They, you know, they were constantly asking me if, you know, everything was all right or if there's anything they could do, and the staff was always there, made themselves available to me, which, you know, if I felt like a child, I'd run to somebody about something, and I was just really uncomfortable. But over that period of time, things, I guess, happened that I didn't realize, because it's like one day I'm doing these things that scares me to death, and I'm initiating these things to do within myself, which is, you know, I don't remember doing that. It's been a long time. You know, I've been taking pills for 40 years and off and on, and that's been my go-to. That's how I've survived or made it. And here I've become aware. I've become aware of things about me, that these habits I've developed, this behavior I've developed over these years of living the way I was living. I realize it has got to change in order for the changes I want to take place, that I've seen, that y'all have made me aware of.
One of the things that you just mentioned, I mean, I know you've been in our conversations real conscientious about changing things. Is there some particular things that you've been focused on at this point in terms of changing some specific mindsets or attitudes or practices that you've been attentive to?
Yeah, a little bit. I hit on a minute ago. My behaviors, my habits, which lead to, you know, these emotions that I feel. Becoming aware and initiating what I needed to do to change this thought process, that's always worked for me, in using the pills and living in that lifestyle. I've, you know, just realized how I have got to be uncomfortable. I have got to do these things I don't want to do, that scare me, that make me uncomfortable. I've kind of got lost there in the thought process on what you were asking.
You're good. You're good. Well, one of the things I wanted to kind of follow that up with is, what's motivated you to want to be, I mean, as you mentioned, these things are uncomfortable. Change is uncomfortable. It takes a lot of conscious effort. It takes a lot of, you know, kind of falling down and getting back up to get, you know, these things going, so it's uncomfortable. Why have you chosen to make yourself uncomfortable? Why even go through it? Why not just stay with what's comfortable?
Well, what's comfortable has been a lot of misery in my life. You know, it's been jails, it's been psychiatric hospitals. It has tore up other people's lives around me because of the way I've been. I've seen, you know, my ex-wife, my kids, what they went through. And it was because of me and my, you know, these habits, behaviors, that I've gotten ingrained in me. That's a big part of why I want to change. You know, I don't want those consequences anymore that I've had.
Okay.
I see possibilities since I've been here. You know, there was one of your classes or Jeremy's, and I'm not sure, but it was like an epiphany hit me. It's like, even at my age, there's still hope. There's something available to me to change, and that was that power beyond us. It's in Jesus, God, that is that's working through all of us, and I've felt that here. I know that here. It's been the way it's brought me the courage to do these things, to change these habits, to change these things about me I want to change.
Right. As you've been in this process, I know it's just been a short time, 4 months, but I guess I was interested in too. And what are some of the successes you've seen in this short period of time? Give us some examples of what are some things that you've been attentive to changing and feel like you've made progress on.
Well, outwardly, I got my driver's license. I had them since 1995. I didn't think I'd ever get them again. They were taken then because I was an habitual offender, they called it at the time, and I didn't think I'd ever get them back. I got those back.
25 years later.
25 years later.
Oh, there you go.
One of the things today that I got my bottom denture Friday.
Okay.
$350. I didn't want to spend the money because I've gotten a little bit in the bank, but I've been wanting that. I hadn't had them in a year, and they're hurting right now, actually. But I'm going. That's another thing that's got to have the pain for change.
Right.
And in order for me to get where I can wear them, I've got to wear them through the pain, which actually coincides with the process I'm trying to do here.
Right.
Go through the pain for the change.
Right. Okay. That's outstanding. Well, I appreciate, one of the things, Todd, I really appreciate about you is that you've been very attentive to seeking help, addressing things. If you were, I know you've approached me many times where something's come up or you want to get input on, or something that maybe you feel like you're reacting to, maybe inappropriately. How do I react differently? How do I understand these things or interpret these things in from a different vantage point? If you feel like you've been offended by somebody, going to them and talking to them about it and getting it worked out, to realize that in most cases they didn't intend to offend you, or that wasn't the case, but that you interpreted a certain way.
Well,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I've discovered there's power in bringing things to the light.
Right.
That truth about me, what I'm going through, how I feel. If I bring that truth out to someone I trust, it makes a difference.
Right. Amen. I appreciate that. So I want to say a prayer for you, because I appreciate you. I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate the mindset that you bring to our whole house and the blessing you are to these guys. And I know you've been blessed by them, but you've been a blessing to them as well. And so I just want to say a prayer for you, and then we'll wrap it up.
Can I also say,
Yeah.
I've worked at 2 different Saving Way stores, and that's another place I have felt comfortable being able to be myself, to let my boss know or something if something comes up that bothers me. And I appreciate those people at the stores.
Good.
Very
That's
much.
great. That's great. And I think it just really points out, it's not just being in our residential facility that this transformation is taking place. It's happening in your work environment, it's taking place in all these different, your church environment, all these different things where you're interacting and interfacing with people that are supporting the process of change that you're engaged in. And so that's critically important to recognize that this change isn't just happening in class here or in a counseling session here. It's happening all day long, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That process is taking place. Well, let me pray for you. Father, I thank you for this time that we could share together. I thank you for Todd. I thank you for the work that you're doing in his life, the work that he's allowing you to do in his life. I know you've always desired to do it. You've always had the ability and the will to do it, but it was his willingness, Father, and I'm thankful that he's willing today. And I pray that even when things are difficult, when it's painful, when it's uncomfortable, that he will not lose sight of the goal, of the prize, and that he'll continue to allow you to be ever working in his life to bring about the change, recognizing that this is a journey and not really a destination, and that the changes that he's experiencing now and have for the last 4 months will continue to build, and that they will continue for the remainder of his life. And Father, for that we are all grateful that you never quit on us, that you never stop us short of accomplishing all that you intend for us. Father, I thank you for Todd. I thank you for his influence in this house and for the influence that he's experiencing, not just in this residential facility, but also in his work environment the same way, that he's getting the encouragement, strength he needs to continue the journey of transformation. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right. Thank you, Todd. I appreciate it. Appreciate what Todd shared. He's mentioned a lot of things that I was planning on emphasizing. I want to start with Clyde's favorite movie clip as kind of as a premise for the message this morning. So we'll start there.
My pain.
Life is pain. Anyone who says differently is saying something.
That's Clyde's big line, right? Life is pain. When it tells you anything different, try to tell you something. Not only is life pain, but fundamentally change is painful, as Clyde mentioned. It's a difficult process. Now, it raises the question because it's interesting because we live in a culture today that is very pain adverse. I was actually, I had done, the yard stuff this past weekend, and again, talking to the pine straw guy while we were picking up pine straw. Ronnie was packing that little pickup of Doug's full of 20 bales and had to take a picture because they never had that much pine straw on the back of a truck before. As we tooled down the road with all those bales of pine straw. But I was talking to the guy who was working there, and we were talking about what we've gone through in our culture, or going through right now with our COVID-19 issues over the last couple of months and that type of thing. And he made the comment. He said, "When did we get so soft?" That was his reaction. How did we end up getting so soft here? It's like, we'll cancel school 2 days in advance. We think there might be a tornado one day. Whatever. How did we get there? What happened? He said, "Don't, it's embarrassing. Think that, our founding fathers sacrificed their lives, and now here we are," kind of thing. And he kind of raised the question, why is it that we are, it kind of raises the question, why are we so pain adverse? Obviously, pain is not pleasant. However, it is a part of life. And we live in a culture that has devoted itself to pain and avoiding pain. If you have any ache or pain, there's always a solution. A pharmaceutical is always out there that you can take to alleviate either psychological pain, physical pain, any kind of pain you face, and you can solve anything you can with this or that, or this treatment or that treatment, this therapy, by this product, and so forth. And we're consumed with avoiding pain, as if pain is something that is avoidable, or in some cases should be avoided. You see, as we recognize here, the reality is most of us have ended up in a recovery program because we were running away from pain. And we found ourselves in greater pain with our efforts to avoid our pain. And so I want to reflect on what that looks like and maybe why. There's a passage in Revelation 21:4 as John is writing about the end of things, as things are coming to their culmination, to the very dream and vision that God has. And I'll start at verse 3. It said, "I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, Behold, the dwelling place of God is with man. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them as their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain anymore, for the former things have passed away." Now, I find that interesting, right? That God's dream, God's vision is that there'll be a day in which death won't reign anymore, which there'll be no more crying, and there'll be no more pain. And we think it should be this way. Here's the problem. Who's going to create that world for us? God. And if we try to create and do the job that God's supposed to do, we're going to find ourselves in the places that we find ourselves. It's not our job to do those things. It's God's job to do those things. But I think it's good news to understand that that is God's intention. And our desire is that we yearn the garden life that happened before the fall. And we still have that embedded within us. We still yearn for that. And Revelation says, yes, and there will come a day. But in the meantime, where are we really? And in Genesis 3, after the fall, it describes the world that had come because of the decision we had made to rebel against God. So in Genesis 3, verse 16, it says this. To the woman he said, I will surely multiply your pain in childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth children. So one is that there will be this increased pain in childbirth. And the other consequence will be your desire shall be contrary to your husband, and he shall rule over you. So there will also be pain in marriage. And Adam said, because you listen to the voice of your wife and eat of the tree of which I command you, shall not eat of it. Cursed is the ground because of you. In pain you shall eat of it all the days of your life. So the earth is now not going to cooperate with you, and it's going to be painful to sod yards. It's going to be painful to pull out the weeds. It's going to be painful to eat the crops because it's going to take work. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you, and you shall eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread, till you return to the ground, for out of it you were taken, for you are dust, and to dust you shall return. That even the end of our lives here is pain. So we live in a world that's not the intention of God. We live in a fallen world, a broken world, a world full of pain. We yearn, we have hearts for that garden life, and we look forward to it one day. A life that God will create for us to enjoy, not one we will artificially create prematurely. There's two kinds of pain. One that hurts you, and the other that changes you. You know, there's kind of a harming pain that we experience in life that we need to avoid. But there's also a transformative pain, a healing pain that happens in our lives as well. The other day, Stella and I were up running early in the morning in the dark, as we do. We rounded the corner, and Stella caught her toe and took a tumble in the middle of the road. Skinned up her hand, bruised her hip, scraped up her shoulder blade, that kind of thing, right? So then we have to hobble back home after that. And then we go about the process of healing those wounds, right? Obviously, it was very painful and harmfully painful to fall on rough pavement. Then we had to get home and we had to put hydrogen peroxide on the wound, right? That was probably more painful than the pain of pavement. However, the second pain is a healing pain, right? Not a harming pain. And so we need to be knowing the difference, and we need to be willing to embrace this pain of change, this pain of healing. Some of us have avoided the pain of change because it just hurts. We just roll it all together, but there's two kinds of pain, and we need to embrace one while avoiding the other. And the reality is, pain is what fundamentally motivates change. The only time we ever change change is when it hurts. In fact, another quote, with great pain comes great change. If you're not ready to change, then you're not in enough pain. And that's the reality. I mean, even with the phone calls I get about coming to His way, so many of those phone calls are motivated by mothers, by girlfriends, by spouses, by fathers, by grandfathers. And my first response was, have them call me. Have your son call me. Have your husband call me. Because transformation is not going to happen until he is willing to make the phone call. Because just because the pain is great for his wife, just because the pain is great for his mother, doesn't mean that it's great enough for him. And it's only in that pain that true, genuine change will take place. There's a quote by Henry Cloud. It says, we change our behavior when the pain of saying the same becomes greater than the pain of changing. Consequences give us the pain that motivates us to change. And I think that's important. I mean, fundamentally, I realize we don't necessarily have a scale in life that we do this with, but in our hearts and our minds, we process. Which is more painful? Staying the way it is or changing? And it becomes at that point in which the scales tip that change begins to take place. And see, here's the thing about enabling, right? Enablers diminish the consequence. They create soft landing places. They create ways in which they absorb a part of the consequence so you don't have to feel as much pain, which then prolongs the problem because that threshold hasn't been met to the point that I'm ready to make the change that I need to make. And so that becomes fundamentally a problem. And there's jokes right about loving people to death and those kind of things where we get so absorbed with absorbing their pain, their consequences, that then in the meantime they just thunder on through a self-destructive life, even to the point sometimes of ultimate destruction. Growth and change, true transformation, does not come from man. You know, just like we said here, the ideal world that we want, we cannot create it. We cannot get the right government to make the world what God intends for it to be. We can't create the right economy to make the world the way God intends it to be. We can't get enough medicine to make it the way the world should be. We can't quarantine enough to make the world the way that we'd like it to be. We can't create that. God creates it. In fact, in 1 Corinthians 3, I realize it's a different kind of context, but I think it makes the very same point. In 1 Corinthians 3, as Paul writes to the church in Corinth, he says in verse 5 to start, says, what then is Apollos and what is Paul? Servants through whom you believe, as the Lord assigned each. I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the growth. So neither you plants or he waters, but only God who gives the growth. You see, the reality is, in fact, I had this very conversation with the Pine Straw guy yesterday. As we were talking about it his way. He said, man, his first comment was, I thank you that you dedicate yourself to helping change people's lives. And I said, I don't change people's lives. And then he said, well, God changes lives through you. You know, it felt like kind of that politically correct kind of, effort. I said, not really that either. I said, all I can do is create a place. And then let God work in that place. We can water, we can sow, but God makes growth. God makes change. God changes things. Changes. And so it's important to recognize how growth happens. So I want to look at one passage for just a minute in Ephesians 4 to talk about God's growth plan, and then we'll wrap up today. But in Ephesians 4, as Paul is writing into the church of Ephesus and explaining this purpose within the church, really, that God intends, I just want to make a couple of points that I think are interesting here. It says in verse 11, And he gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the shepherds, and teachers to equip the saints for the works of ministry, for building up the body of Christ, until we all attain to the unity of faith and knowledge of the Son of God, to mature man, and to the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ. And there's a lot in there. But let me make one important point. In order to be transformed, in order to change, we need trainers. I was at the golf course the other day, and I saw a friend that someone I've known there for many years named Phil. Phil hadn't been there a long time. So I was talking to Phil because I didn't know how Phil was doing. Phil had major surgery. And Phil was talking about the fact that, he's been going to therapy, right? And how important it is to have good trainers. And how important it is to follow their training. In fact, he said that, I was kind of raised as an older guy, I was kind of raised in no pain, no gain kind of philosophy. So I've been trying to get myself better and pushing myself in my therapy until it hurts. And then I found out from my trainer the other day that you're hurting yourself by pushing yourself that hard. And you're only prolonging the problem. Don't do that. And it occurred to him, so he doesn't actually know how to train himself. He needs a trainer for that. And here's the reality. God intends for us to have trainers. That's why he gives apostles, prophets, evangelists, teachers, pastors, mentors, sponsors, brothers, counselors, a community. See, the reality is we're not going to change in isolation. We're going to change by the influence of God through other people. And so we need training. We need trainers. We need people alive. As Todd mentioned, going and talking to people, getting input from people, whether it be his boss or a coworker or a counselor or a staff member here or whatever. We got to have those people in our lives. We need God-created trainers to help change us and to train us. And the second thing he says here, like I said, there's a lot in verses I can be very proud of. I'm going to keep it brief. In verse 14, so that we may no longer be children tossed to and fro by the waves and carried about by every wind of doctrine, by human cunning, by craftiness and deceitful schemes. Rather, speaking the truth in love, we are to grow up in every way into Him who is the head, into Christ. The second thing I think is important, we need trainers, and those trainers need to bring us truth. We all have a tendency to want people to like us. Hence, we don't want to tell them things that they're not going to like. However, the things we like are the things that keep us where we are, and the things we don't like are the things that are going to take us where we need to go. So we need truth. We need people willing to have the courage to speak the truth. That need to be willing to say that I love you enough to risk my relationship with you for the sake of the transformation that you need in your life. That's painful. That can hurt. But fundamentally, what is love? Love is a commitment to the other's best interest. And when I withhold the truth, when I hesitate to bring honesty, I'm simply preserving our relationship so we'll love each other for the true, genuine change that God desires to bring in a person's life. So I'm more concerned about what you think of me than I am about your destiny. That's not love. Speaking the truth in love is what will bring about transformation, truth. And A will protect people from the truth. Oh, it's not really that bad. I remember, in churches, we're terrible about that. I've been in church ministry all my life, and I've always been it's about the transformation of people. And it's about people engaged in life that help them change. And some people are just sweet old people, they don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. Because that's what being a Christian is, right? You always just be nice, you don't want to say anything bad about anybody, you don't want to say anything hard, you want to just be nice. We're supposed to do. So, I've seen many times when people are convicted by God about change in their life, and they'll fall before the Lord in tears and prostrate before the Lord, and they'll be begging for God's transformation. Everyone's going, oh, you're really not that bad. It ain't really that bad. Oh, you're so hard on yourself. That's enabling. That's trying to bear the pain of somebody else's life upon yourself so they don't have to hurt so bad. That prolongs addiction and suffering. The third thing he says, I just want to point out, verse 16. From whom the whole body, joined and held together by every joint with which it is equipped, when each part is working properly, makes the body grow so it builds itself up in love. So I think it's a beautiful picture of the church. You know, when the church starts really working as a group, everyone's doing their part, it kind of naturally builds itself up in love. It just naturally grows when it's healthy and functioning the way God designed it to function. But I think there's a sense in which there's this ongoing training that needs going. We need trainers, we need the truth, and we need the ongoing process of people doing the jobs that God's assigned them to do so that we can all continue to grow into what God intends for us to be. Phil mentioned, needing training. One of the things he realized is that he was doing all these exercises trying to improve himself, but doing them the wrong way, which was creating more damage than help. Well, you need a trainer and you need the right training. You know, some people say, practice makes perfect, right? Well, if you practice the wrong way for a long period of time, that does not make perfection. You need the right practice will create that perfection. I remember a number of years ago when Tiger Woods was trying to improve his golf swing. I heard a quote where they were talking about what he was going through in this process. And it was really hard on him. He was frustrated. His golf game had dropped pretty dramatically from its original successes in his effort to make it better. And as he was in this interview, he said something that was really interesting. He said that I'm trying to make these change my swing, which are very uncomfortable. And my natural tendency is to want to go back to the way I've always done it, right? So my problem is when I start feeling comfortable, I realize that I'm gravitating back toward my old swing, and I'm not changing. And so I have to get comfortable with the idea of being continually uncomfortable if I'm going to really change. And I think that's important. That part of this process should be discomfort. That change is uncomfortable. That change is awkward. Todd made that very comment in his interview, right? That's uncomfortable. And that part of this process is discomforting. And so it's important that we're willing to embrace the idea of not being comfortable, of feeling awkward, of feeling out of place. I feel like it looks like everyone in the world is leading with the right foot, and I should be leading with my left, and it feels weird, but I'm going to do it. I remember a good friend of mine one time, early when I first started dealing with recovery ministry, he had a couple of guys who were in recovery in his house, and he was trying to help a couple of guys. And I remember one of the things that he emphasized to me is that in order to change, you got to change everything. And so one of the things he was getting the guys to do was, if you always get up on the right side of the bed, get up on the left side of the bed. If you eat with your right hand, eat with your left. I thought, that sounds really ridiculous. But I think the point is, all of that forces you to be consciously aware of the changes you need to make. If all of a sudden you're not even doing you have to think a lot more about what you're doing, which is constantly uncomfortable and making you aware. And if you think about always changing, in a sense, to that left-handed way of doing things if you're right-handed, then you have to consciously be aware of your process, which makes you less comfortable and more able to change. Does that make sense? So, my encouragement to you is, as Paul says here in Ephesians 4:15, we're to grow up in every way into Him who is the head, into Christ. Grow up into Jesus. In fact, in 1 Peter 2:2, it says, grow up in your salvation. And it even says of Jesus in Luke 2:52, and Jesus increased in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and man. Even Jesus, the Son of God, had to grow. He grew in stature, obviously, but he grew in wisdom, and he also grew in favor with God and with people as he got ready to bring God's transformative ministry to this world, the ministry that's changing our lives. So let me just challenge you. Grow up. Grow up into Him. Will it hurt? Absolutely. But it's a healing pain, not a harming pain. Let's pray. Father, I thank you for this time that we can share together. I thank you, Father, that you are working out your purpose in our lives. Father, I pray that you will continue to help us be willing to suffer for change, to hurt toward good, to be pained toward your character and toward your transformation. Help us not to be afraid when it's awkward, not to be afraid when it hurts, not to be afraid when it seems uncomfortable. But help us have the courage to lean into that discomfort, that we may discover what you have for us to become. Father, I thank you for Jesus, that is the one that transforms us all. In whose name I pray. Amen.
Growing pains, symptoms and causes of Mayo Clinic. Growing pains are often described as an ache or a throb in the leg, often in the front, thigh, the calf, behind the knees. Growing pains tend to affect the legs and occur at night and may even wake a child from sleep. Although these pains are called growing pains, there's no evidence that there is growing pains. And I'm going to challenge the Mayo Clinic on that. Being a child of God and submitting myself every day, life is pain. Well, that means I'm alive if I feel pain. I have emotional pain, I have physical pain, I have psychological pain, and I have social pain. I have so much that life is pain. I'm living it up. And I've found enduring pain, going through pain, the reward has always been good. I have changed how I react to other people's behavior, and still am. It's not what happens to me, it's how I react to it. I'm thankful for the results or consequences of pain into change. It's good growth, and it's God's growth.
This reminded me of, there's a line in one of the literatures for Alcoholics Anonymous that's touched my heart, and actually not really touched my heart, but kind of bothered me for years. It says, pain is the touchstone of all spiritual growth. And that's exactly what Tom was talking about. It rings true in my life. Too many times in my life, I have hurt so bad that I wanted to change. And what I've learned, and what Tom was just talking about, is not only do I have to want to change, I've got to do something about it. And I've got to follow other people's example and listen to them if I really do want to change. If I allow God to do what He does, He puts people in my life to create that change in me that needs to be made. My best thinking got me here. My best abilities got me here. The only thing I can say to that is that I have too many times I've been on the other line of a wife saying, you need to call Tom. And I did this time, which I'm eternally grateful for. But the point I want to try to make with that is that if I do want to change, I have to take some action. Wanting to change isn't just enough. God puts people in my life to take me to places where I need to not have to hurt so much to want to change something in my life. I'm tired of blowing everything up to the point where then I want something better for my life. I don't want to do that anymore. I've done that too many times. I want to be able to feel a little bit of pain or see something small that's negative to want to change it. I'm tired of hurting so bad that I have no other place to turn to. Changing in my life creates something that I'm not comfortable with. I don't like things being different a lot of times. You know, coming back here, this place is different. It's not the same that it was before. That's not good. That's not bad. I've always heard the phrase in life, there's two constants in this life, and that's going to be death and taxes. Well, I think you can add change to that as well. Things will always change, whether good or they're going to be bad. And for me, that change has got to create growth. I've got to use that change to move in a direction. Now, I'm going to move one way or I'm going to move the other. There's no standing still. So I want to use the people that God put in my life to create something, to change into something better. You know, my prayer life is not what it should be. But there's one constant thing I do want to change in my life, is that's being a father and a husband. That's something that I have not been, that I've not done well in a long time. That's a change I want to create in my life. There's certain people who I don't need to go to learn how to do that. But God's put people in my life to help me to be able to do that. I need to take that knowledge of the change that I want and move towards the people who have something that I want to have and have that growth. For example, I work a lot in irrigation and landscape and plants and things like that. When there's a problem, one of the first things that people do, especially older people, don't want to single anybody out, but the first thing they do when they see something wrong in their yard is we just need to water it more. Well, that honestly creates more problems than they had to begin with. They constantly water with good intentions, but end up killing more than they were trying to help. So then I come along and I teach them how to limit that. What else needs to change with your property? Do you need to feed it more? Do you need to do this and need to do that? That's what God is doing with me. Is that He's putting people in my life to change certain aspects of it. My wife, I love her to death. She's one of the most amazing people in my life. But if I want to kill a plant, I'm going to give one to Sarah. That's usually what happens. But if I want to learn how to take care of our youngest, he's 11, almost a year old. If I want to learn how to take care of him better, I got to Sarah. You know, if I want to learn how to apply some of this stuff in my life, I got people like Tom. If I need to get a haircut, I go to Bobby and probably not Zach because he's long. But what I see myself is that some of the most beautiful things in my life start with a mess. If you look at a house, if you look at landscape, if you look at us, we start out as messes and get brought together into something beautiful. There's a verse that's always meant a lot to me, and Paul talks about this in Philippians. It says, "He who began a good work in you will carry it out unto completion." I've heard a lot of people in these rooms say that we are works in progress. That's what I want to do, is continue to change in a progressive way. So that's what I'm getting from this. I'm going to change. It's going to be good or it's going to be bad. What's my choice today? So thanks, guys. I love y'all.
In 1 Corinthians 10:17, it says, "Since there is one bread, we who are many are one body, for we all partake of the one bread." Romans 12:5 says, "We who are many are one body in Christ, and individually members of one another." So just as we share the Lord's Supper to declare our fellowship with Christ, it also declares our fellowship with one another. And I think that's something I kind of wanted to touch on today, especially the week we've had here. We've had some people leave. You know, we're here. I'd like for us, as we take this, to not only remember our commitment from a spiritual aspect, but also our commitment to each other. I mean, you've got a group here that comes from a wide range of guys I'm closest to here. Probably outside of here, we would never cross paths in our lives. We grew up in a rural area in northeast Alabama. We grew up in a big city on the streets, you know, running the streets. So, but it's one of the guys I'm closest to here. So as we take this, let's just kind of think about that and our sacrifice, not only for God, but also our sacrifice for each other. And that's what I want to touch on today. When we eat the Lord's Supper together, we're confirming our commitment to the duties of the fellowship of Christ and His people. It is a pledge to continue to walking in the light, and pledge that we will continue to love one another, edify one another, correct one another, and bear each other's burdens. It is a pledge to continue to share the gospel of the lost, and a declaration of our eager expectation of sharing